So, how are you this afternoon? How's LA? How's work?
LA is rainy and wet. We got the most amount of rain since what I heard was the record year 1982 to 83.
Oh
That
shit,
was the that
that
was
must have been
the
hard.
that was the most rainy periods so far, and I still think we haven't got that record, but it's been raining for a long time, so not so sunny.
Well, it's same here in Italy as well. It's been raining a lot. Anyways, let's start today's conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have here with us Mr. Pontus Fontaeus. He has been designing cars and automotive for over 20 years now.
30.
And Mr. Fontaeus, would you like to give us an introduction of yourself to us?
All right. No, very, very shortly. Thank you, first of all, everyone, for tuning in and listening and sharing some of my thoughts and visions or whatever questions will come up in this podcast. So, I'm originally Swedish. I'm both American Swedish citizen. I've been designing everything from graphics to architecture to products to commercial airline seating, but mostly it's been cars, and that's my forte. And I've been doing so from, as I said, 30 years plus. I'm a graduate alumni from Art Center College of Design in Switzerland. Graduated there in 93. Before that, I was technical illustrator, freelance illustrator, art director in the 80s, and so on. So I'm creative to the core and still pushing the boundaries, I hope.
Well, I really hope because you have been in this game for a long time and you have been through changes that most designers don't really experience. So, talking about those changes, one of the things that I was curious about, because as you mentioned, you have been in the industry for 30 years. I wanted to know, like 20 years ago, we had something called as clay modeling, which was booming across the automotive industry. Everyone was hiring specialized clay modelers, even in interior or exterior design. And now we are seeing the same thing with CAD modelers or 3D modelers, people who specialize in Blender or Alias. Do you think this kind of effect will happen again 20 years from now when it will come to artificial intelligence?
Mhm. Very, very interesting question indeed. It's probably almost impossible to foresee the future today as much as we could have our thoughts beforehand. Artificial intelligence is obviously here, but it's just a tool. So far, it is a tool. And as I said, I was in advertising in the 80s, and on the agency that I then worked, more and more computers came in and desktop publishing. And at that time, my boss didn't really want to do that. He was going to be very manual and cutting and gluing and doing it the traditional way. But I was super, super curious. And a lot of people said, well, if desktop publishing come really true, then you don't need any agencies. You don't need a graphic designers because everyone can do it at home. And we have had this talk with 3D printers and we have it when design and there's been many different um, automated apps, so to say, that you can do graphic design or we can do that. And now Midjourney and AI is just the latest thing, but it needs an operator, right? So you still need to be artistic or creative or know what you're looking for. And I think that is a tool used by a person without that knowledge or vision or artistic flair or whatever, it will be not so good, I think. So I don't think it will replace. I think it would be a great substitute. I'm super, super curious about this and see where we take it into the future. I think that you said clay modelers, and now we have the alias modelers or cast modelers and so on. In a perfect world, everyone is needed, right? The best is still a ping pong between digital and physical, right? But we also took a lot of shortcuts because I'm representing a completely digital studio. We don't really have any 3D properties. We do 3D print just to verify sections or have small volume models and so on. But me being in California and headquarters being in China, there is where it's happening. As I said, in a perfect world, you have everything under the same roof and you apply what you think is the best at the moment. But we came so far in understanding what we see on a screen or in a VR. So we really, really practiced our senses, and therefore it's just to slipstream the process. I think if we have a random AI generator and we don't know what we're doing, we're always going to be lost. If we know what we're looking for, it can maybe spur creativity. Further than that, it's a guess, right? Then you come to some future utopia where it's doomsday or everything takes over, whatever. I'm thinking much more positive about it.
Well, that sounds great because, I also think that AI is not really something that will be, replacing designers or taking their jobs, but just as a tool that would help them through the whole design process, make it more smooth and a little bit more refined, not really just completely snatching it from them. And as you said, very good example of advertising. Same with the graphic design happened in the 80s and 90s, where they were afraid of softwares coming from Adobe, but now all the graphic designers they use the same softwares every day. So I think yeah, something similar would happen to AI as well. And well, another thing was I was looking at some of your past career experiences, and I noticed that after working for a long time in Europe, you went to United States to help with for Faraday Future, if I'm not wrong.
That's correct.
Okay, so what prompted you to take this decision? Why did you thought, leaving Europe and going to US and starting an entire new company with new design philosophy would be such a great idea?
No, so I always been very curious, and I always try to go to places where I could learn. I could be mixed with what I think is the most creative companies or the most talented people in the industry, designers and so on, and really give me an exposure and soak up that and learn and so on. And the thing is, I went to Renault after being at Germany, and I worked for Renault in Paris just because I considered that there was such a high level of creativity and also under the guidance of Patrick Lequemont. The same reason why I then changed to the Volkswagen Audi group under the leadership of Marcus Varkus, because I really, really was amazed of the products they did and their design philosophy. And by always searching for something where you can learn and where you can be inspired from, have always been my driving force of moving and changing. Now, why I went to America, it's more than one reason. First of all, at the time in my life, because you also mentioned here in the beginning that car design have changed so much these last 20, 30 years. And we have gone from pretty much something we knew and not using as much technology to have EV platforms and so much more technology that we can use. It's not only screens, it's voice control, it's holograms, it's so many things we can do now. How we interact with the vehicle. Before it was hard buttons, a DIN or a double DIN, and it was pretty straightforward, and it was not so much more advanced than the previous decade. Now, the startup mentality, when I moved here to 2015, and what was happening in California as a trend setting, just like a factor, what how it will change the automotive landscape, I found extremely intriguing and exciting. So of course I wanted to be there. And at that time, so many companies, not only Far the Future, we had Lucy, there's many others that was very disruptive to the industry and tried to push the boundaries and challenge the pretty much established automotive companies that had hundreds or 100 years of experience and a legacy, and they're really amazing car companies. But if you are, as me, curious and you like a challenge, you start really with a sheet of white paper. For you as a student, that's what you do, right? It's a blank sheet of paper,
Yeah, yeah,
and you're going
definitely.
to come up with something. Once you've done that a couple of times, you maybe want to create a brand. You maybe want to create more of a lifestyle, and how people interact, and change the layout and the architecture. And then the EV platform gave much more possibilities, and then the drive and the energy in California, right? And then I've been most of my time working in Europe, working for Asian companies, being in Korea as well, but mainly European company, or being in there. For me, I want to try something completely new. If I spend the first 50 years of my life in Europe mostly, I try to spend the coming 50 years more in North America and Asia, right? So that's, I'm going where the most intriguing challenges are, and that's what drive me. And then thirdly, yes, there's been raining, but the sun and the weather in California is amazing. So, that helps.
In the American industry, we have only had a few brands in the last few years who have been like the iconic brands such as Ford or Dodge or Chevrolet. And when Tesla came, it sort of become a disruptor for the industry, especially for the American industry. And that intrigued a lot of people to that think about that. It's not very hard to start figuring out something new. You just have to have the guts to do it. And as you said, it must have been a very interesting challenge for you to coming all the way from Europe to US, and meeting new design philosophy, new people, and new way of design, also new market base. I think it must have been like pretty good thing for you as well.
For sure. I
Now,
mean, it's
as you mentioned,
stimulating.
yeah.
You feel refreshing, and you meet other people, other people's thinking, right? So you, of course, you get stimulated of other ways how to do it, and then you can still kind of feed back on what you know, and that is what the drive, this fusion all the time between cultures and mindset and thinking and so on. So yes, absolutely.
Perfect. And another thing was previously you mentioned that you currently work for GAC and your main design studios in China, whereas you work in Los Angeles where you have a completely digital environment, completely digital workspace. Could you tell me more about that? Because recently I've had, many students and many young aspirers, they want to work for, let's say, a brand such as Mercedes or Ferrari. So for that, they need to be in Italy or Germany or nowhere else. Is it really possible to have same kind of results and same kind of experience working digitally like you do for GSE?
Um, I think so. So first of all, we mentioned mindset here quite a few times, right? The mindset of the company. If we look at GIC and our advanced design studios, we have one advanced studio in-house in Guangzhou in the headquarters, right? But then we have one which is in Shanghai, so they may be in the same time zone, but they're still further away, right? They still have to be digital. And the VP of design, which is my boss, Fan Sang, he has to trust that they are working, and that we always have an agenda, and we manage and curate the projects, and we respond to input and support him and the rest of the company. Now, The LA studio was the first one, right? We started 1 year before Shanghai and a few years ahead of our latest advanced studio, which is in Milano, since a year, a little bit more. And again, what else could we do than working digitally? And we feed, of course, on Guangzhou, and we get inspired by each other. But more so, we give a lot of output to Fan and the team in China that they can really benefit because we are disconnected, right? So I think absolutely it is possible. When the pandemic hit us, the Impulse was designed in LA, everything, and it was built in Shanghai. And I saw that car a few weeks ago when I could travel to China again. I haven't sat in it. I haven't seen it. We did everything digital, and we trusted our colleagues to build and manage the data from CMF, interior, exterior, to the graphics, to the quality, to the finish, to the surfacing, both exterior and interior. We designed and we built, digital, the whole Ion Hyper SSR, right, which was revealed last fall. And again, I saw it now in flesh, right? Again, we could not have
Mhm.
done that without the trust and the communication and the understanding for what we want to set up, our benchmark and our ambitions and our visions for that. But it's absolutely possible to do it. And that said, I have consultants working not only in America but also on other places in the world on a distance, to supply us with ideas and work. So I absolutely think that it works, but there's certain things you have to establish. You have to have often you have to meet, have talks, discussions, inspire each other, even if you're in distance, and you have to be pretty pragmatic and hardcore to be able to work if you're alone. And that is more, how do you inspire each other, and how do you get everything that you can, but even if you not meet in person, that's the toughest thing, right? And I still think that the human interaction between designers and creatives is absolutely the best. So I don't think that anything beats that people meet in a studio setting, which is done for that purpose. If it's like with physical properties and clay modeling and or digital and all the VR that we're dealing with, it doesn't matter. Personal interaction is absolutely second to none.
Cool. Because, well, that sounds more of, like you have to really know these people when you work with, because when you look about the time zone, even in LA and Shanghai, it's a huge gap. So if you share some information today, they might receive it by the end of the day, and they will start to work on it tomorrow. So I think you really have to have a very good form of communication and very good form of trust with them, so that you can get everything done on time, everything done as per the schedule. And as you said, you give the feeling of seeing something that you have created digitally for years, and then you get to see it in flesh. I think that really emasculates as a very, very good feeling for you, especially considering, like, for after the pandemic, I think right now was a good time to visit China. So you really got all heartfelt of your work, all of it as in the flesh, you can see.
No, for sure, for sure, for sure.
All right. One more thing that I want to talk about. I have been thinking about it for a few days because I saw this post on the internet, and one of the things that I heard that designers take very lightly is about call as UI UX design. Now, I've had a couple of scholarship opportunities where they only talk about, figuring out how to design a UI UX. But I always get confused. Do they mean interior design, or do they mean the design of the dashboard or the touch screens that you see on the dashboard?
Mm.
So could you please tell us, for me and for the audience, as to what it really means to have UI UX design? Because I
All
think
right.
you have specialized it for a long time now.
Mm. So this is very near and dear to me, and um, if we're looking at the last 5, 7, 10 years, tops maybe 10 years, but I would say 8 years, 7 years. 2015, when we started for the future, I and my team, we started very, very, as I usually say, pragmatic. But we started with a brand. There was no brand. We started with a logo type, and we created the first digital logo, the first flat logo, because we identified that our clients and target groups and people that want to view the car slash the brand, they will do it through a digital media, phone, iPad, whatever, right? So we wanted that logo to be flat, and you know how many companies follow that. But if you look at it, the FF logo was the absolutely first, and was spearheading that understanding, the digital understanding. The second thing is, why do we design things? It's an exercise in styling. Do we dress the hunchback, or do we do a design that answer certain questions or needs and purposes, right? So the UX is the user experience. That's the first. The user interface is how do we interact with that, right? And it comes down if we have screen or voice control, or how we do those graphics on a screen, plainly, right? But what are we looking at? We're looking at an interior, and that is why I think that today is much more interesting than it was 10 years ago with electrification and the technology we have, because we can change the layout. And you see companies that done that. For the future, we were saying there was the first car in its class to offer a true or genuine first class experience. And we said no bad seat in the car. That means that we were not doing that for the driver. We're doing it for the 4, 5 other places where you can sit in that car. And it was very democratic. Now, we also said, when I sit in the co-pilot's spot, what do I want to do? Do I want to see a part of an IP in leather with some aluminium bling and saying airbag? I'm completely uninterested in that. I only have to look at the road and see, if it's a nice vista or whatever. I want maybe to have entertainment. So we put the screen there. And because we wanted that screen and we still wanted to be able to look throughout from the windshield, we had to change the architecture and how the airbag bounces back on. Usually it's the windshield, but we actually had it on the screen, so we put it much lower. And then we said, we don't have a glove compartment. Where do we have that storage? And so on and so forth. We also did the spa. I have to say, like, it's a sensational ambience where we combine sound, light, fragrance, massage, everything that you have in the car to do a true holistic experience, together with our at that time zero gravity seats, right? And when I then continued, I went to GAC. We really had this inside out philosophy that we started then, and we showed it to our first concept car coming from LA, the Entrance, where we speak a lot about human-centric values and inside out, truly. But going back, the core of a human experience, whatever it is, to interact with a machine, right, is how do we communicate and what do I want to have out of it? And the design needs to respond to that. Otherwise, it's not purposeful. It has, it's a nice object, but does it do anything for me? And then we have the exterior, where we obviously have to package everything. And at that time, I always said that UX UI is like the gemstone, like the diamond in the ring. And what holds that that gemstone as the ring, right? It's the ring. That's the interior of a car. And the exterior is just a Tiffany box, right? It has to come in a nice package, but that's what it is. So the, it's so essential for everyone to understand why we are designing things and why UX UI is important. And it's not only screens, right? It has a content. It has a content that is not sharing information or you're entering information, since we are using mostly screens, but that will change in the future. But it also gives a visual value to the interior, because if you have a TV in a room, that all the interiors and colors and everything will actually be secondary when you look at that screen. And what is on that screen or that television is highly affecting the look of that room, right? Because you look at that screen, does it apply the same colors? Is it in unison with some graphics or the foreign language on the physical things in a car interior, and so on and so forth? So it's very interlinked, everything. And I think that people may not start there. The UX UI is the absolutely starting point, right? But it's also the end point, because that is what you end up interacting with the car. And the voyage, the trip between those, should be seamless. It should be natural. You should not even think about it, right? Because then you can really focus on what is important, driving the car, as long as we drive our cars ourselves, and everything else. So when we have a bad interface on a product, it's like speaking with a person you don't speak the same language, or you don't share the same opinions or whatever, right? And that's why we have to do this smart and clever, seamless. And it has much more value on the physical design that you may think on the first glance. So my strong recommendation, think of why we're doing this. And when you start to think about, is this the best way? Is a steering wheel the best way how to steer a car? If you start to think about that, you may come up with another design solution. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that if you start to question everything, then you will see we could do it in this way, because that would be better. If you're not thinking about it, you're just going to design it, and then you're going to style it, and then you're going to come up with a shape which you don't think, why? I mean, we do square steering wheels. Why do we do square steering wheels? We did a square steering wheel in the FF91 at that time because we wanted to look over the steering wheel. So, of course, having a round one. But then we could say, if this would be a commercial vehicle, a truck, you have to operate a lot, maybe much better to have a completely circular, or an off-road vehicle, maybe much better to have a completely circular steering wheel, because that would be much more important for the user. So thousands of examples. Our own, let's say, this curiosity is an important mindset of mine. If you're curious and you question things, is this the best? Have it been done? Why is it done? Can we do it in a different way? But coming from the core, which is we are the users, we are the human beings. We're doing things for ourselves. So if we don't really think why we do it, then we can't think how we can do it better or in different way. So UX UI, absolutely core, and then the rest will follow.
No, I guess you're right because, as you said, UI UX is kind of like the gemstone on a ring, and the exterior design is just a Tiffany box. Because most of the time, anyone who owns a car would spend it in the car driving it, or being chauffeured around. The people who would only look at the exterior are the ones who are standing outside. For example, if you have a Porsche 911, you would rather, you know, give importance to how it feels and how it drives when you're sitting inside rather than how it looks outside, because it will be for other people to notice. But for you, it will be to sit inside to drive the car perfectly on track and off track. And I think UI UX comes at the most core of it, even more important than interior design, because it allows the user to experience and interface with the design that is being created inside of the car rather than just the bold exterior looks.
Yeah,
And
but
I
I've
guess with
never
that,
said that it's not important to do the packaging because, a car is a moving sculpture, whatever it is, if it's a box so we can get as much space in it, or it's like a low slung, very fluid sports car, it's still a moving object that has to be attractive because the anticipation of you're going to see like, oh, I really like the packaging and this box, and then you open it up and it just builds up from there, right? And you still like to buy the nice set of boxing, and why do we have so many YouTube's video of us unboxing, and why do we go for so intricate and expensive um, um, designs just to have a watch in, right, or something? Yeah, because it's important. When it comes to the car, it's also something you wear, right? Because you're making a statement. You say, this is my values, this is who I am. You want to show off. You show if you're driving a car which is electric. Are you conscious about the environment? You want to say that you are rich and wealthy. You say that this is what I like. I don't give a toss about what anyone else think when I show up in my car. It's still a statement, whatever you do, and it's still a dress, right? So it is super important how the exterior looks like. But we can't just go from an exterior as it was before and just come and go down, and then is nothing, right? Because the user experience in a Rolls Royce or a Fiat Panda was actually not so different, right? It's the drive, you have a radio, there's that. It was just so much luxurious in a luxury car. Right? So exteriors, everything counts, everything is important.
all right, thanks for giving me that note. I guess, yeah, it's really important because at one point you would think, what people would be thinking about your car from the outside. Does it look good or not? Or does it shines enough or not? Does it have enough gold in or not? Does people think, is it expensive or not? So I guess it is pretty important as well. And yeah, with that, I think I would like to end this conversation. I think I had a really great time with you. I hope you had the same. Now, before we leave, I just want to ask you one last thing. Do you have any advice for design students like me who are currently exploring the world of transportation design?
Yeah, no, it's good, and thank you for everyone's time. And why I think it's also important to do this on this level, I want to speak, I want to touch upon certain things for the new generation of creative people, but also I would like to have input from you guys as much. So for me, this is very important, even sometimes more important than to be among fellow professionals on a big seminar or something, because it's professionals. Now we are speaking with people that are coming, the new generation, and how do we then also inspire each other, interact, and can we learn from each other, right? So the thing is, work hard is absolutely one of the most important thing. People have various degrees of talent, but how do you embrace what you have, and can you work so you can be better? Of course you can. Training is everything. If you have no talent, right, it's like you said about AI, you will never be able to create something at this point with AI which is of any value. But if you have a lot of talent and you have a good vision, AI can be an amazing tool, because it's not necessary that you have to express that you're a good sketcher to be a good car designer, right? And that was how it was in the past. But if you create it through another media, can you write design suddenly because you have it here, right? So that opens up a lot of new opportunities. But the thing is, work hard and train as much as you can to be as good as possible in this profession, but also be multitask and spread your not only your wings but your horizons of what you can do to be more I wouldn't say multitask, but more multidisciplinary, like you know more things, so you can use things from other areas to complement what you're doing as a core profession or so. And I think it's super important to work hard, to be curious, and also to understand that you are thriving on other people. This is so much a team sport. If we work in isolation, you can be the best in your class, but without your fellow students, you would not be that good, right? So don't forget that people counts around you, and be kind and respect other people's opinion. Even if you don't agree, you will get something out of that. You look at something which is odd and ugly and you say, that's not nothing. Forget that. Be curious. See, is there anything there that can reset my processor up here to do something in a new way, which I wouldn't have come up because it's actually pretty bad, but it actually inspired me to do something which I wouldn't have done unless I'd been exposed to that. And most important, everything, have fun. Because if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. I've been doing this for a long time. I have fun every day. Someone is paying me to do this. Um, that's a great privilege. So think about that. If you work with what you've done, I know it's a cliche. Not a lot of people think about it, but you just spend your life as you want it, to having fun and do what you want to do in life. And that's a great, amazing privilege.
Thanks a lot for sharing that input with us, Mr. Fontaeus. It was great talking with you. Had a great conversation about a lot of topics, and I really had an actual good time talking from soul to soul with the
Thank
designer,
you.
with a huge age gap and representing the new generation of designers. It was really great talking to you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. This was Mara Jethani presenting Simply Being Season 2 for NIWWRD. Thanks, Mr. Fontes, again for coming to the show.
Thank you.